Well, hello everybody, and thank you for watching this video. We are going to be looking in depth about data and getting on to how we analyze data with an expert in the field, a friend of mine that I've known for a few years now, Jamie Allan. Morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you very much for inviting me. Lovely to be here.
It's great to have you. So we're going to start looking at a little bit about data, but why should we start there? Why is data the kind of first point in the chain?
Well, the data is actually the key element of any business. Like any business need customers, the data is effectively what the customers do with the business. So that's the starting point. When you first have your meeting, when you first make that call, you log it, you write it down, you do something with it. That's data, information about people. And that's where it all starts. So gathering data and gathering the right data is absolutely vital to a business, and getting that data in some sort of format of control is even more important.
Sure, yeah. And speaking of controlling data, I guess we're all quite aware of regulations around how data is stored and how data is used. I mean, what do you see as the kind of pitfalls, the risks there if we don't approach it correctly?
Well, yes, as you can imagine, companies these days have a mass of data. They often don't know where it is. They suddenly get a knee-jerk reaction thinking, my goodness me, we haven't spoken to them for a while, let's do something. But of course, with GDPR coming in 2018, there was a massive kick up the backside to a lot of businesses, especially the large ones, to get their data sorted and cleaned. And whilst they did make an effort to do this, it was even more vital for the SMEs, for the smaller businesses to do it, because they had stuff literally all over the place, in spreadsheets, in various databases, on laptops, in notebooks, all over the place. And they suddenly thought, oh, I know, let's talk to these people again. But of course, you can't do that. You've now got to have a structured approach under the GDPR regime, the controls, to actually make sure that you are managing that data appropriately. Because if you don't, you can be fined for even for misinterpreting it. Like all these things, if you don't know what you're doing, it's not an excuse. So
does it have to be centralized then? Is that what you're saying, that you're looking, the first step is to bring the data sort of together to one reference point?
Yeah, ideally is to get the data first of all found, cleaned, analyzed, and then centralized in a what I call a customer relationship management system, which we all know is a CRM. Mm-hmm. Because once it's all centralized, you can then manage those relationships with those customers. And also during that process, you can get that data cleaned, which is all part of the GDPR process to get the opt-ins.
I guess sometimes it must be difficult for businesses to know really what data they need when they start out, because there's so much you can collect. You think we've got Google Analytics where you can have figures coming out of your ears. We've got interactions online, people filling in forms on our websites. And often when you fill in a form, you think, do they really need to know that? I suppose, how might a business identify what data it actually does need and should be trying to collect?
Well, actually, that's a really good question, because that's the proper starting point in any business, is to understand what do they want out of the information that they've got. So essentially, they need to establish the strategy for data gathering. You know, they're going to gather data. What do they want the data to tell them? What does it focus on to help the business move forward? So it moves towards a strategy. And essentially you then collect that data. So you need to then find out where you need to go to get the relevant data to make those business decisions to help that strategy move forward. Then you go through the process of cleaning and analysis and interpretation and visualization. So you've got everything in place to actually understand why you want that data in the first place and how it's going to work for the business. Absolutely vital.
Mm-hmm. Could you describe a little bit what you mean about cleaning data?
Data cleaning, data cleansing. A lot of data that resides in various silos or on laptops or even in CRMs often are not fully populated. There are occasionally duplicates in there. There are blank fields in there. There is misinterpreted fields in there, like telephone numbers are wrong formats, or there could be numerical data in free format fields, and of course that happens. That's not going to actually transcribe into an import. So cleaning the data is making sure it's what's called normalized and verified, so that you have data that you can realistically use. So you know you've got the right person at the right location with the right number, the right business, and like all these things, data, it's a movable feast. Every 6 months, data changes, which is why it's vital for businesses to keep on top of their customer data.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, as you know, we with Business Grandmaster explore the analogy of chess with business, they're bringing the two worlds together. And sometimes people, when they're starting out with learning chess, they don't necessarily analyze the whole. They just look at the odd possible move and then get a bit bored and think, oh, I'll just get on with it. Do you think in business there's sometimes a tendency to not spend enough time on analysis and looking at the data that's available to us?
Yeah, absolutely. You need the data to help you interpret how you're going to move forward. The data is vital to build your strategy. So if you think of your chess pieces as the data elements, so your king is an element, your queen is another. They all have different purposes, different values. So you need to understand, how am I going to make that data work to move forward in that chess game? Just like you look at your data to think, of the people that we've been selling this product to and service, how are we going to actually encourage them to either buy more from us and strike up a better relationship with us? So each of those pieces on the chessboard has a value, just as the customer data, each individual customer has value to the business.
Yeah. And I think as well, we can start with a kind of an idea sometimes in mind, and then we go to the data, collect the data, but perhaps is the data set then sometimes going to change our strategy? So you were saying about having an idea in the beginning of what we were aiming for. Is there perhaps a danger that we try and cast that data into an image that we already want it to be, that rather than allowing it to re-inform our strategy going forwards?
Well, yeah, some companies I'm sure do go ahead and think, no, that's what we want and that's what we're going to do, without actually thinking, hold on a minute, our history tells us that what is actually happening is totally not so much the opposite, but different. And you should ideally listen to, or not so much listen, but understand what historically has gone before, because that'll help you decide the types of customers and the types of business and the types of services that historically you've done well in, that you can actually get a differential, get a better market angle on, so you can actually create campaigns that make you different in the marketplace that only you can have. So use the data to help you understand more about your business, so you can write strategies and create marketing campaigns that actually work and are targeted at the right people at the right time, by actually profiling that database.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, chess matches, we often find that as we get higher up the rankings of better and better players, that they seem to be playing kind of set patterns to begin with, where they're setting themselves up with the type of game they know how to play, and they know how to play well. It's sort of preparing yourself for your strengths, and that can only be done by looking back at what has worked in the past.
Exactly, and this is where the analogy with chess is brilliant, because as you start out in chess, you think, that's great. Oh, good, I can move there, I can take the king, brilliant, I've won. But as you get older and as you get wiser, you come up against other people that are better than you, and you think, my goodness, it's not as easy as I thought. So you think, hold on, how am I going to learn to actually be different and actually beat this guy or that person in the future? And that's where you've got to rethink how you're going to move forward. You've got to rethink your strategy. It's exactly the same with data. As you sell products and services historically, markets change, opportunities change, you adapt to the marketplace, but your data all the time will be helping you understand how that's happening. And that's why, you know, just like you learn in chess, you learn how to run your business and how to move your business forward from the information of the that's coming out of the data back into the business.
Yeah, I suppose then the question then becomes more about prioritizing aspects of the data. When we're analyzing a chess position, there are lots of things we might notice that are not going to impact a position as much as various others. Now, within business, when we're collecting our data that we're going to then take forwards and think about formulating a strategy around, how do we prioritize our data?
Essentially, you should do what I call a customer profile, an 80-20. 20% of your customers will deliver 80% of your business. Generally, it's not an exact science, but it's pretty damn close. And by doing that, you can then concentrate on that top 20%, because those are the people historically that have done the best business with you. When I say the best business, have done the most, the best, the majority, but they're doing more with you. So those are the ones you need to concentrate on, and those are the businesses that will ideally be the profile of the companies that you should be targeting in the future, because that type of business works well with your business. So that they're what I would call an ideal customer. The other 80%, you need to try and get up the value chain. So you need to break that down. And I work to a sort of a gold, silver, bronze, and lead, because lead sinks to the bottom, and that's the bottom 20%. So that 20%, you really got to think, well, don't sort of put them in a pit, but put them in an archive and visit them once every 6 months or once every 9 months, but don't concentrate on them. And then the next section, the next area, which is the bronze area, if you like, the 50% of the 60% that's left, it can get a bit complicated, but essentially you're working from the bronze to the silver to the gold, and you're concentrating on getting your team of people to talk and build those relationships with the best customers. So that's why we concentrate on gold, but try and get the silvers to gold and the bronze to silver.
That's a process of refining then, really. Yeah, and
it is a refinement, because you don't want to be doing business with companies that don't really want to do much business with you. They're happy to maybe buy something from you once a year because that suits, but it doesn't suit you. You want to be able to actually develop that relationship, which is fine. So you don't, as I say, put them in a pit. You keep them on an archive. You keep in touch, but you don't concentrate your time on it. Yeah. So this is where I say that when you create a marketing campaign, it comes from the data. It comes from historically where you've been successful. So you're talking to the right people at the right time.
Certainly, I remember when I was starting out in chess, and I still do it to an extent, unfortunately, at times, is you get distracted by what looks like a nice, pretty idea, and you spend an awful lot of time looking at something which, in the terms that you were speaking about there, is effectively your 20, your lead customers, if you like, the ones that you shouldn't really be spending all your time on. And before you know it, a whole chunk of the game has flown by while you've just been sitting there, oh, this is interesting, isn't it? Having a look at that, and it's irrelevant. You're losing out on the majority of it because you're not focusing in the right place. It's easily done.
And that's absolutely right, which again comes back to chess. If you're not focusing on the right piece at the right time, you're not going to make the right move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think interestingly as well, from what you're saying, I mean, I think people sometimes think of business and chess as well as being quite sort of linear. Well, you start with your data perhaps, and you process all the way through to the end, and it's just a straight line. But actually, data and strategy is not just a straight line. It's kind of cyclical, really, isn't it?
Yes, it also has bumps in the road occasionally as well. Yes, yeah. Can you get a circle with bumps in it? I guess you can, as long as it joins at the end of the day. Absolutely, but it's not an even run, because you've got to react to markets, and that's why you always need to be engaging with your data every 6 months or so to make sure it's up to date. Certainly every 12 months, because there are always bumps in the road. There's always something coming out the woodwork. You think, my goodness, what happened there? And it could be anything from from market pressures to legislation, like GDPR, for instance. You think, my goodness me, we need to clean up our database. Where is our data? And then you go back and, you know, start again.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's critical. Data is critical.
You can't just sort of think, oh, well, I've done my data analysis, I've got my strategy in place, never again shall I open that book, you know.
Precisely. Precisely. I mean, how do you get to be a grandmaster? Because you're constantly thinking, changing, moving. You're adapting all the time.
Learning from mistakes,
life.
refining, moving forward that little bit. You know, you kind of, in a way, you need the losses. You need to see where you're going wrong to refine your game, to move yourself forward. And it's the same sort of thing with business. It's all very well putting out a strategy, but it's not like it's a holy document never to be touched again. It's a working document, isn't it? It's something that needs to keep being informed by data that is refreshed.
It is exactly that, and it shouldn't be siloed either. Because whilst marketing have requirements above sales, have requirements above finance, have requirements above operations, they all have their own requirements, but they're all feeding off the same data. So they all have different interpretations of that data. So it's like having the team around you. So this is what builds a strategy. You get buy-in when you, for instance, create a CRM. You get buy-in to the people who are actually going to use it, because if they think it's not actually fit to manage their workflow, they're not going to use it. So you have to actually understand what their workflow is. So similarly, the other departments need to understand the whole data environment, so they can have buy-in to the strategy, because they'll want something out of it that marketing will not.
Yeah,
they'll have different strategies. So to get buy-in, it's all about the team. Again, coming back to chess, there's a team behind the player, and it's exactly in business. That data drives the business, but everybody shares it. But everybody has different interpretations of what they want out of it. And it comes right back to your first question: what do you want this data to actually deliver for the business? And that's where you get the buy-in.
Yeah.
Well, again, that completes the cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that's been very helpful, Jamie. Thank you very much for coming on to this video for us today. Really enjoyed having you on. This is Jamie Allan, everybody. And I hope you'll be looking to find out more about how you can use your data for your business more effectively for planning and amending your strategies.
That's great. No, thank you very much again for the invitation.